and that he had a plane hang up in Chicago, but I didn't tell you, I've never told you anything else. He'll tell you why he's in a wheelchair, and why he's sitting down, and why he hasn't been here before, and then he won't have to answer the same question 407 times and repeat the same story. All I can say is, in presenting him, practically all of you know who he is because he's been here with us every year. And he is going to speak on his subject, even though I'm going to ask him to tell a little about his personal situation so that you don't have to ask him again and again. The only advice I would give him is, or give to you as a result of his experience, is be careful with yourself in playing tag with your grandchildren. He's sitting here with a busted leg, and he can give you the wonderful details. Anyway, you can't see him from the back, but he is here. He has a yellow cast all the way down and up and down his leg, and his name is Jerry Fridenstine, and welcome him here. He arrived within the hour. He's here to present his subject tonight.
Thank you, Dean. Well, you know, each year I've been fortunate enough to be asked to come here, and each year it's been a joy to me for me to be here because it's such a great conference. But I have really missed out this year. I don't have the foggiest what's been going on. So you tell me, has it been a good conference? Okay. Well, that's pretty good. I even saw a few heads rattle. Has it been worth your effort to come here? Does this planet need more people like Dean and Phyllis Stonier? Yay! Tell them so! Rattle your heads. Praise the Lord for people like that that'll put the effort forth that takes this to bring a conference like this together with such great speakers. One of the things that I have seen over the years is as each speaker speaks, there seems to be a continuity that runs through it. And as the whole week accumulates to the end, there's such a crescendo of information that flows through. There's that information that flows through from speaker to speaker to speaker, and it is really something beautiful to see, and I hope that you're seeing that here this week. I only flew in just a few minutes ago, and I'll fly out again in the morning. I'm sorry I can't be here with you this week, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. How many here have taken a shortcut in their life? Any of you take a shortcut? Did you end up on the short end of the stick when you take shortcuts? Yeah, cheaters never win, right? Yeah. Well, how about when you preach to your grandchildren for year after year, if you do this shortcut, I'm going to brown your bottom, right? Well, then you get playing water tag and you take the shortcut you've been preaching about. Guess who ends up on the short end of the stick? That's how I ended up with the cast. Cheaters never win. Don't take shortcuts. You're in big time trouble, okay? What we'd like to talk about this year is something pretty much the same what we talk about each year. You know that we've been involved in agriculture for years, that we have been involved in the human health field for years, and we have tried to show people over all of these years the interconnectedness of everything and how that interconnectedness functions externally and internally to your system. And we'd like to look at a little history first. If you can see this chart up here, we see, if we go back to the Bible, we see that people in Adam's day were living in the 900-year span. Adam, Seth, Enos, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, all of these lived in the 900-year lifespan. Enoch was translated. Methuselah lived longer yet. And then we see that we come out to Noah, again over 900 years. And then something happened. Something happened to man to change the longevity of man. After Noah, we see a very big drop. We see Shem, one of Noah's sons, lived less than 600 years. Now, what happened after the time of Noah that caused the lifespan of man to drop, where we see it down here at Seth, Arphaxad, Selah, and Eber. We see that it's in the 400 range. Remember that Shem came through the flood, so he was before the flood, so he lived 200 years longer than the people in the next generation after him. What happened to create this huge drop in age from 900 years to 400 years lifespan? What had happened was the flood, ladies and gentlemen. The flood came and washed the topsoil away. Oh, you trying to say that there's a connection between topsoil and my health? That's exactly what we want you to see. There is a definite connection between what goes on in the top 4 inches of soil of the earth and your health on a moment-by-moment basis. If you can move that chart over a little farther, we'll see that we come down again, down to Peleg's age, and we follow it down through, bring it all the way over, if you will, down to Joseph's age, where we're down into the 100-year span, 70 to 100-year span, which is where we find ourselves today. So we see that man learned how not to take care of soil over this time span. Next slide, please. There is an interconnectedness that runs through everything, and we begin with energy. Is there an off-on switch for this? Okay. Everything begins with energy, and that's where things begin. From energy we come to elements, such things as very basic things like carbon, calcium, phosphate, nitrogen, etc. When we combine these elements, we come to compounds. Compounds come to substances. Substances combine and become cells. Can you move that up at all so the people behind can see? We then come from cells to tissues, from tissues to organs, from organs to systems, and systems beget bodies. Let's go up to the top over here. When we come from body, we end up at man. When man combines with woman, we end up at mankind. From mankind, we have a connection. We end up with families, communities, city, state, country, and continent. There is an interconnectedness that I want you to see here. If we have a breakdown in the compounds, the way that they are put together, will that have anything to do with the man? Of course it will, because it will weaken the man if the compounds are wrong. If the compounds are wrong, does it have anything to do with the cells? Of course. If the energy is out of place, will it have anything to do with the cells or the tissues or the organs? Of course. If the organs are out of place, will it have anything to do with man? Of course. Will it have anything to do with he and his wife? Of course. Will it affect the family? Of course. If he's not able to do his job or his wife is not able to do their job and they fall down in their end of things, will it affect the community? Of course. Will it affect the city? Of course. The state, the country, the continent. Do you see a little interconnectedness between all things? That interconnectedness is there whether we understand it or not. The interconnectedness is going on whether we see it visually in our minds and see these things going on or not. So we see that if there is a problem in the compound area where these elements are put together, if there is static electricity in here that is putting out false signals, it can affect the man, the mankind, the family, the community, the city, the state, the country, and the continent. There's an interconnectedness. Next slide, please. Let's look at some very basic things here. Hydrogen, a very simple substance. We see that we have the center here, and we see one shell rotating around hydrogen. We see here carbon, a much more complex element. We see in the nucleus here we have 6, and we see around it 12 different rotating orbits around it. Next overhead, please. So we see that things get complicated in a hurry. This is another way of looking at it. In a periodic table of charts, we see hydrogen here with one shell. And let's come down here a little ways. At phosphorus, we see 2, 8, and 5. It's getting complicated in a hurry, isn't it? Let's look over here at osmium. 2, 8, 18, 32, 14, and 2. Okay, we don't want to give you a science class here, but we want you to see how rapidly things can get complicated when you're looking at basic elements. Each one of these elements is singing their own song. Each one of these elements is doing its own thing and carries its own frequency. Next slide, please. Looking at it another way, can you move that down a little bit? This is another chart put together by Dr. Kerry Reams. It's on Milhouse units of energy per atom. So it's a way of looking at each one of these elements and putting a electrical charge, well, I said that wrong, in putting a relative amount of energy depending upon the charge that that element carries. In other words, the song that it sings produces X amount of energy. So let's see here, we see hydrogen starts out at 1,000. We come down through here, we see another element here at 22,750, 42,250, 56,500, 122,500. So we see that the more complicated this primary element is, the more energy it carries if it is singing its own song. Next slide, please. Let's look at light for a moment. We see a similar thing here. We have a nucleus, and we have electrons spinning around this nucleus, and we have photons of light energy coming from the sun. It's very similar to radio waves. The sun rays are invisible, and you cannot see them. The light rays are visible in some instances, but you have ultraviolet rays and infrared rays that tan you that are invisible and you cannot see them. What you're looking at here is the energy of light is what every farmer is. He is a harvester of light. Every vegetable, every fruit, every meat that you eat, and every fish that you eat is a harvester of light. So in one form or another, you are a light being. You are energized by light by everything that you are using. Next slide. Everything that you eat has to do with that. And let's look at another situation here. We see color compounds of transitional metals. And let's look at a couple of these here. Let's look at manganese. Most of you are familiar with manganese, and we see a manganese chloride, and this is the chemistry formula, MnCl2, and the color is pink. A manganese sulfate, it is Mn2SO4, 3 is the chemistry formula, and the color of it is green. My word, what happened here? We're still talking about manganese, aren't we? Let's look at the next one. Manganese oxide, MnO2 is the chemistry formula. The color of it is black. Now, how can that be? Chemists say, my word, you can't change these elements from one substance to another, but they're changing these elements from one substance to another all the time, and we see that their color reference is totally different. This tells us that color therapy works, ladies and gentlemen, because it changes the chemistry formula and changes the function of the substance. That's why color therapy works. Not because Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so says it does, but because even their own science textbooks says it does. Next slide, please. So we see that color has a lot to do with our lives. What can mess up the color energies in our system and the energies that run everything in our system is electrical smog. This is one that you could write to Reader's Digest about, January 1980. It's over 10 years old, a very good basic article on electrical smog. They'll probably charge you $1. There are more and more information coming out on electrical smog. I see Dr. McCrosky is here. I hope he's got a table set up where you can get a lot of information on electrical smog, because we're going to talk about that a little bit. Next. Electrical smog is one of the things that is messing up people very dramatically, because the electrical impulses in our households are impacting the mineral in the system. We see that people today no longer have the mineral that Noah had in his system, no longer have the mineral that Adam had, and we have a lot of strange frequencies in here messing things up. Next overhead, please. We see a situation by the late 50s, Soviet scientists found that low-intensity microwave radiation on humans produced headache, depression, eye pain, irritability, weariness, dizziness, hair loss, heart pains, hypochondria, memory loss, loss of appetite, diminished intellectual capacity, and emotional instability. Does that explain anybody in your family? Does that touch anybody you know? Next overhead, please. All right, funny thing about that. In the United States, you've got over 125 million TV sets, and this information is about 8 years old now. Over 8 million families cook with microwave ovens, over 8 years old. An average American now gets a daily dosage of electromagnetic radiation up to 200 million times more intense than his ancestors took in from the sun, stars, and other natural sources. In other words, you're taking in over 200 million times more radiation than Adam did. And you're doing it with 1/10 of the mineralization of the body that can help block this type of thing. Could that cause some problems? You better believe it can. This is the type of thing that you see all over, right in the schoolyard of the children, is big beaming mechanisms like this putting out electromagnetic radiation. It's everywhere you look, folks, when you get to looking around. Electronic smog alters our internal clocks. This can break down resistance, which will allow dis-ease. Right here, the University of Colorado medical researchers claim the death rate for certain cancers, such as leukemia, is twice the average in homes within 130 feet of high voltage power lines. How many people saw that in the Rocky Mountain News? It's been out for 10 years, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't seen it, you should have. Shame on you. Did your local newspapers carry it? If they haven't, shame on them. This information is very old and has been around for a long time. What happens is we have in our brain is a central processing system. It has to do with the information coming in from memory, from the brain itself, and we have both external and internal input coming into this processor. This processor functions with the information that it gets, both from the brain and the memory, and it puts out the output information and creates the motor action that drives the body. That's how the thing functions. There are several mechanisms by which ELF electromagnetic fields might affect living tissue and animal behavior. These mechanisms are, can you put that up higher, please? The atomic paramagnetic effects of these electrical fields affecting the mineral in the system. That's what they're talking about here. Molecular structural effects, actually changing the molecular structure of what's going on in the system itself. The resonant effects of the cell and organ, the electrical and mechanical systems of the cells and organs. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the information that is coming into your cells is slewed. The information that's coming in is being interreacted with electrical smog, and you're picking up erroneous signals, okay? And you end up with the neurovascular behavioral effects that can help. In other words, the brain is not functioning. It's functioning part way. Dr. Taché likes to talk about people that are brain dead. And we see that in our society all over. People that are non-functioning. Much of this can come from what we're looking at here. Let's look at a couple more of these. Dr. R.C. Mellon and this fella here, you pronounce it, reporting in the British magazine Nature, report an apparent link between the daily number of admissions to the cardiac thoracic wards and the daily planetary index of geomagnetic activity. So not only do we have all of this radiation that we're making ourselves running around, but we have a direct correlation with how many people are going into the hospital with broken ankles from jumping off, 2 foot off into shallow water when the emissions are very high. On crazy days, we have stock markets go berserk and dumb people that jump off 2 foot high and break ankles, okay? This data suggests that emissions increase with magnetic activity to a much greater extent than could be explained. Right, they go brain dead. Nothing's happening. Okay, this is a look at different cycles, and we are in this cycle here, cycle 22, which is one of the highest cycles that we have ever encountered since the early 1900s. Cycle 22 is expected to track up through here, through 92, and then level out through about 96, and then start tapering off. That's its expected run, okay? This is a 90% expectation figure, is this chart up through here. No, I'm sorry, I told you wrong. This center line here is the 90% expectation. The high side is where it could go, and this low side is the low side of that. So they're expecting through 1992, before this thing begins to even think about peaking out, and then it'll start sliding out from there. So we are expecting many, many strange phenomena happening in the weather. Is strange phenomena happening in the weather in your part of the world? I was just talking to a farmer in the hallway that has said, hey, we've been in a drought for years and years, and now we're flooded out, from one end of the spectrum to the other. Are we seeing strange phenomena all over the world? Are we seeing more earthquakes? You're going to see the largest, highest tidal waves this nation has seen since the turn of the century in December of this year, and possibly the very largest earthquakes we have seen for an awfully long time, all connected with this. What I'm saying is that watch for people to do dumb things, including you and your family, throughout this period of through 92. It can cause stock market crashes and all kinds of strange things. The next overhead, please. These things are affecting everything that you're doing. Let's keep that off for a moment. What we are looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is the mineralization of the body. The more mineral that the body has, the more it can counteract these types of strange energies. The less mineral the body has, the less effect, the less capability it has at counteracting these strange energies. What we are looking at is demineralized people, and we see them all over in our families. People with less energy all the time, people that are tired all the time, people that collect every illness that comes down the pike. We are looking at demineralization, and you have to remineralize that system to reverse that process. Remineralization may take a long time if you have a situation where that body is being impacted with electrical energies. This electronic smog creates real problems because the electronic smog that we are impacted with impacts the hypothalamus, which is directly connected to the pituitary, which is one of the endocrine system. Okay, if you have the endocrine system out here functioning, and you've got all of the parts of the endocrine system out here functioning, and one part goes down to half function, the whole rest of the endocrine system is over-functioning, isn't it? So all that it can do is start sliding down. It has to go down to the lower function. In other words, it's only as strong as the weakest link. And that's what you have in your system, mineral-wise. The body can only be as strong as the weakest link, the weakest amount of energy in it. And it is the same identical situation in soil, plant, animal, or man. If you're dealing with the energies of the soil, it's the same chain of events. The plant, the same chain of events. Animal, the same chain of events. And if you're eating sick plants out of sick soil, you're eating sick animals raised on sick plants, how do you expect anything different besides a demineralized system that's headed in the wrong direction? Don't expect anything else, because that's all you're going to get. You cannot go against the laws of nature. We saw in the first chart the laws of nature. When the soil is depleted, age processes go down. We age more rapidly. The more radiation that we are hit with, the faster the age processes go. It's a system. Can we put that board up here? Can you erase that board, Rob? And I'll have you draw something on it in a moment. It's a system of the safe zone, which I have drawn for you before and talked to you about before, and I hope some of you remember it, because it has to do with your immune system. It has to do with how well your system functions. It has to do with your reserve energy. The safe zone is dictated and predicated by how much mineral is in the system. And that tells how fast you're going to age or how slowly you're going to age, is how large your safe zone is, or how large your reserve energy is, and how large your immune system is. Give me a center line, please. Thank you. Okay, we have a center line, a zero line. Now give me a standard, no, start right here, standard waveform, okay? We have a standard waveform down here. Now give me a safe zone across that, if you will, above that and below that. Okay, as long as the system functions within this safe zone here, everything goes along fine. It makes no difference whether you're talking about pH or you're talking about temperature. If your temperature gets too high, what happens? If your temperature gets too low, what happens? If your pH gets too high, what happens? If your pH gets too low, what happens? You see, the safe zone is very important in everything that goes on in your system. The larger this safe zone is, the larger your reserve energy. The larger your reserve energy, the larger your immune system. So let's make that safe zone twice as large, Rob. This is my son, Rob. He's the oldest of our family. Yeah, part of his children. He had some of them. It's partially his fault and his wife's. His wife, Holly's, back here. I'll blame it on her, too. Okay, we see a situation here where we have a safe zone twice as large. How can you make the safe zone twice as large? You all know people that are healthy, and you all know people that are sick. Would you say the safe zone on sick people are smaller than healthy people? Of course, it's common sense. The difference is the amount of mineral in the system. Now, what does mineral have to do with this? Okay, that's it. Mineral is what carries the electrical charge of your system. You are an electrical being. You are electrical. You are mineral, and it is the mineral that carries the electrical charge in the system. That's what you have to recognize. You have to understand that. The more mineral in the system, the more electrical charge. The more electrical charge, the more energy you have to do whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's dumb or sane, whether it's brain dead or not brain dead. Okay? So you've got to look at this situation because it dictates your immune system. If you look at food that comes out of a microwave oven and you look at what it does to your reserve energy, you won't like it. You will find that it will shrink your reserve energy and make it very small. In other words, it will make the safe zone very small. If you will use electronic instrumentation like we have shown you other years, like the incomparable SE5, that the biofield spectrum analyzer, if you will use an instrument such as that to analyze foods, you will find that some foods are very high in mineral and other foods are very low in mineral. What's the difference? Well, follow it all the way through. You will find that some foods, the ones that are low in mineral, are the mineral energies, say that they're very low in calcium, or phosphate, nitrogen, and so forth, you'll find that they're very high in chemical and metallic poisons. So we have a difference in the way food is grown. In the way food is grown and how it is cared for on the farm in our demineralized soils, we have a situation that has to do with the food as it comes into our systems. How does that soil get more demineralized than from the flood and other things catastrophes that has happened on planet Earth here? We see that by the chemicals that are used on the farms today, that also demineralizes things. If you will use something like the SE5 to balance out those chemical poisons or metallic poisons, any electrical scanner, electronic scanner, if you'll use that type of instrument to balance out those chemical and metallic poisons and recheck, you'll find the mineralization is up higher in those same identical foods. So yes, you can take foods that are not grown properly and you can change them and make them into better foods. We have gone steps beyond that now with newer instrumentation that does some of that automatically for you. Many people don't like to get into the cost of an SE5 and the training that it takes to learn to run one, so we have come up with other types of equipment. But let's look a little more at this electrical situation. The next overhead, please. Bring it down, if you will. Okay, we see a situation here starting out, and this happens to be a group of racehorses, or a racehorse here, and we see a general vitality of 365. We see that the performance level is at 190. This horse is out to pasture. He's not fit to do anything. We see the acid and alkaline balance is not too high. It's not too far out of balance, but it is very low, very low mineral-wise. And we're looking here at the different meridian balancing systems. Can you get that all the way up to look at this bottom picture here? I don't know how many of you can see this, but what we find in an acupuncture situation, we find, for instance, the liver, its time to shine is 1 to 3 a.m. That's its time when it is really functioning at the top. And the opposite of that is the small intestine. And at 1 to 3 p.m. is its time to shine. The exact opposite, you see. If we look at the large intestine, okay, it's 3 to 7 a.m. and the opposite of that is the kidney. At 3 to 7 p.m. is its time to shine. Okay, let's bring that down a little bit. You see that we have lumped these together here so that we run these opposites at the same time. So as we run down through here in these two bank rates, we come up with a 192, a 42, 125, a 274, a 232, a 180, and a 304. This doesn't mean much to you, except that these are the electrical meridians of this horse, racehorse, and we see that we are going from a high of 304 down to a 42. There isn't much continuity in here, is there? There isn't much balance in the electrical system, is there? Now, after giving this animal mineral, because he's so mineral deficient, when these two numbers here are both lower than the general vitality, we know that we have a mineral deficiency. When both acid and alkaline are lower than the general vitality, we know that we have a mineral deficiency. So by putting more mineral into the horse and then balancing these meridians, balancing all of these meridian blocks here, we see that we came up to a much better balance from 423 to the 300 range here, up to the 500. So we see we're going from the 300 range up to the 500 range. Okay, now by remineralizing this animal, here's looking at the animal the next day without doing anything more to the animal, we see that the general vitality has gone from a 365 to a 425 here to a 473. So we see that by remineralizing the animal and balancing this up, it had a very positive effect on the total animal. Even afterwards, it has gone up here more than 150 or more than 50 points all by itself. So in other words, the system is beginning to take over and run by itself just by balancing up the electrical system and remineralizing the animal. Now, to keep this up over a period of 30 days, this animal came out and we see here hanging in the 900 range, where the electrical system of this animal is averaging in the 900 range instead of the 42 to the 304 range. All of this imbalance in here. This animal is ready to go back to the racetrack. Normally, an animal with the conditions that this animal had when he came off, he'd normally be in the paddock for 3 to 6 months before he could heal himself. Going at it from this point of view, in 30 days, he's back on the track, ready to go again. So we see the electrical charge in the system and the electrical balance in the system is very important. How many here can say they've got great electrical balance in their system? I don't see very many hands. It's because you don't have a way of analyzing. We do this with the SE5 biofield spectrum analyzer to analyze and balance this type of thing up. But remember that balancing this thing up, if the mineral isn't there to hold it, it will not stay. It'll drain right out. If you have a lot of electrical impulses coming in, it's going to drain right out also because you're going to re-affect this whole electrical system. Stop and think about this mineral that's in the system for a moment. Many of you are gray-haired like me, and you'll remember back during World War II, the rest of you have probably heard the story, about the planes that would go over before the bombers would get there, and they'd drop little aluminum foil, streamers of aluminum foil to foul up the Germans' radar. And the Germans used it to decorate their trees, so I've been told at that time, their Christmas tree, it's the only decorations they had. So they found a use for everything. But anyway, it fouled up the radar. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's what's happening in your own system. You have so many metallic poisons in the system that your electrical systems are being fouled up. The signals that you're receiving are erroneous, both from the stellar atmosphere and from man-made radiation. If you look at the foods, if you analyze the foods and the waters that you're drinking and eating, you will find that they are very high in metallic poisons and chemical poisons. And the bonding agent for most chemical poisons are metallic poisons. So you'll always find a combination there between the two. So what you're having is a situation where you are ingesting in your water and your food electrical conductors called metallic poisons that are hooked to the foods that you're ingesting, and these metallic poisons are conducting and picking up this electrical smog that you're being hit with, and that is giving erroneous signals to the body. And so when the brain tells the pank to pank, and the liver to liver, and the lung to lung, and the heart to heart, you're not getting the proper signals. You're getting half-assed signals. You're getting electrical smog. Your screen is a little smoggy. Your central processor is not processing properly, and therefore you end up with electrical meridians that look like this. Okay? You've got a very sluggish system, and you end up with people, as Dr. Touche says, that are brain dead. They jump off of a dock into 2 foot of water. They're breaking the rules, taking shortcuts, swearing you're going to break that kid's bottom if he does it, and you do the same thing right in front of him. Dumb, dumb, dumb. But that's what we get. We get an electrical smog situation that causes these meridians to go down, and we are not carrying a straight signal. So what we have is calcium in the signal that is singing a half calcium song. Can it get into the cell? Of course not. It's not available on the cell level. It's not singing the proper song. Let's look at the next slide and you'll see this. This is really a conglomeration. This is a group of people, and this is the percent. This is an actual classroom situation. This is the percent level of the different cell salts on the cell level. You know, for years we've trained people using electronic scanners how to analyze the cell salts of the body and get the cell salts balanced up. But it was at this conference a few years ago that the information came through that said, dum-dum, why don't you look at the percent of cell salts in the cell, not in the body? And so we started analyzing for the percent level of trace mineral cell salts in the body. So we look here and we see at calc flour 12, calc phos 12, calc sulf 22, calimure 4, caliphos 17, calisulf 21, nate mure 39, nate phos 31, nate sulf 8, ferrophos 40, magnesia phos 25, silicea 11, and lithium beryllium, which was one of the things that came out at that conference, we'll speak about it in a moment, at 31. Do we see any balance in here? Do we see any balance in the cell salts? And you know what? This is a group of people that had taken a 1-week training course in using electronic scanners, 6 days and 5 nights of training to learn how to balance up minerals in the body. Had they been doing it? No. See, you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink. So we see that by adding mineral to this situation, we added stress whacker to this situation. 30 minutes later, these are the balances. We come up to a 67 to the 70, 69. We see much better balances here, don't we? By adding the mineral stress whacker, which is one that we feel is the best balanced mineral on the body. We then added this same stress whacker through the instrument that we call the solution. It takes 55 seconds to run it through, and we see that we're at 97 to 101% of the cell salts. So we see that we can change the mineralization of the body by running it through the proper instrumentation, and if they will take that mineral for a period of 3 days, that they will come up to 100 to 100% to 1% in the whole body. The average person walking up and down the street, their general vitality is in the 300 to 600 range, and their average reserve energy is in the 100 to 300 range. Where's their immune system at? Zilch. Okay? If their reserve energy is this low, you'll find their immune system is very low also. Why is it low? There's not enough mineral in the system, and when the mineral is in the system, it's being impacted by the electrical smog, and it's knocking it out in situations like this to where it is totally imbalanced. It may be in the body, but it's not available to the cell. So you have to make that mineral available to the cell. So what we're looking at is a situation. You can shut this off now if you wish. We can have the lights now. We're looking at a situation that what we have is a lack of mineral and then a lack of mineral in the cell. Many people can take mineral till they're blue in the face if they are being impacted by a lot of electrical radiation. it's not going to get the job done because of the electrical radiation. Now, the thing that we have found most effective for electrical radiation is the pen armor. It does the best job of balancing up the body and blocking electrical radiation. There are several other items on the market, and we have several of them that we have used, and for different instances, sometimes they make more sense. But for the normal situation, we find that the pen armor is the best thing for blocking radiation, which will then allow the mineral to start to stick. Once the mineral begins to stick, then you can begin getting the electrical charge up in the system. And the electrical charge will come higher and higher and higher. Now, if we could you get that little instrument, Rob? Maybe you could stand up there and show them these two instruments. We have two instruments that we actually have three versions of this. We can show you two here. The one in the wooden box is a clinical model or for agricultural situations. The little one here is a home unit, which is automated instrumentation. It is the darndest thing we have ever seen. What we're working with is light frequency, actually cold laser energy, to structure water or mineral or whatever you put into the unit to make it structured, similar to a homeopathic, but in actuality an isopathic substance. Now, the difference between a homeopathic and an isopathic: a homeopathic substance is unstructured. Its energies are flowing in all directions. And if you take a homeopathic substance, you know that many times it will not mix with other substances. It'll be knocked out. And if you take a homeopathic substance, set it near an electrical source, it'll wipe it out. You can set it near a radio or near a TV or set it on your refrigerator and it'll wipe the homeopathic substance out. With an isopathic substance, that is no longer true. It will not wipe it out because it is structured. You can take a substance that is made in either one of these solutions here and hold it right against the TV screen, analyze it before and after, and you will find that it will carry the same energy throughout. Where it is so very, very important is so many farmers that are still going belly up. Because when we had them using instruments like the SE5 to make homeopathic fertilizers and spread them on their fields, they would work anywhere from 1 to 2 days depending on the electrical charge on that field, and then they would be wiped out. But we find a situation now where we have substances that are made isopathically, that they are out there in that field until that plant has used them up. So you're into a totally different set of science here. There's nothing to do with radionics or anything like that with instruments like this. These are strictly isopathic instruments using light energy to make substances structured to the specific chemistry. Now, what they have the capability to do, the larger instrument there has the capability to neutralize, or rather antidote, or clone. In other words, a farmer can spray out an herbicide out there. After it has done its duty for 3 or 4 days, he can go out and make an antidote of that and spray back on that field and kill out, actually antidote that herbicide and actually produce a crop that is organic. Would that be better for you? You better believe it. He can also take any fertilizer that he's going to put on that field. He can put soil specimens in the input side of the thing. He can put field pictures in the slot for the field, and it will automatically analyze the energy of the soil, the location of that field, and structure that fertilizer exactly to the requirements of that field, automatically. Automatically. Doctors, we have doctors using them, taking a substance that a patient needs, a drug that a patient needs, but they have developed an allergy to putting it in there, cloning it with the patient's picture. In other words, cloning the same identical energy with the patient's picture, except that it removes all of the allergens automatically. And it will make the drug available for that person to use it without any allergy discomfort whatsoever. It has many, many capabilities. You can run plain water through it. You can use substances like stress whacker. That's what we use, and we use in class a lot. And it will structure that substance to fit the specific body chemistry. You'll hook that plug up, Rob, on the side. You can run this plug, for instance, you can put it on antidote and neutralize. Run that cord through your refrigerator and antidote and neutralize all the foods in your refrigerator. Run it through the cupboard and clean up all the foods in your cupboard, in your freezer, your pantry, what have you. Every time you bring your foods in, run them through the same process before you put them away. Set them on the counter and antidote and neutralize them. The next thing that you can do is using that same cord, set it in the kitchen, and when you fix your plate, your meal, set it on that cord with your picture in it, and it will structure that food to the specific energy patterns of your energy field. In other words, you will never get another food that is an allergen to you. And the same thing with your waters. What you will find is that you will begin drinking a lot more and eating a lot less. You can use all the minerals, herbs, supplements, etc. that you've been taking. If you analyze them before and after, you'll find that you'll take about 1/10 of what you've been taking previously. Now, it may take you a month to remineralize the system to get you to that point, but you're going to come up to that point and level off, and you'll take much less of it. But the important thing is, or one of the important things is to remember that the energies cannot be wiped out. Okay? The energies cannot be wiped out. So you can carry them in your car, you can put them wherever you wish in the car. There is also a cord that will attach to an electronic scanner so that you can broadcast those energies long distance. For instance, the other day I was having a fit with my leg and my spine, and I couldn't get into the chiropractor. It was his day off. So I ran the cord down through my foot, or around my foot a couple times, laid it up in the back of the spine. Within an hour, all pain and discomfort was gone. We have doctors that are using it in conjunction with Vol-type equipment where they analyze all the meridians of the body and find the different allergens of their patients. They then use this unit in conjunction with the BED. I think Rob has one hung up in the back here. You can try one out. And you run the cable from the solution under the BED, and they take all of their patients' allergens, and one at a time, they run it through on antidote and neutralize, and they neutralize those things. It takes 55 seconds for each one of them. And so the normal person with 20 different allergens that they've found, in less than 15 minutes, they have every one of them neutralized in the whole body, and they can no longer pick it up on their instrument. Now, that does not mean that, let's say that wheat was one of those. If that person goes out and loads up on wheat right away before he gets rid of the wheat energies in the system, that doesn't mean that he's not going to, you can't be brain dead and expect anything to work no matter what it is. But it's quite phenomenal what can be done. The little unit will not do all of the things the big unit will do. It's more of a survival tool, and it's more of a traveling tool, a home tool and traveling tool. With the little unit, you cannot use a photograph, but you can stick your finger in it and do many of the same things. Okay? So you need to look at some of these things, ladies and gentlemen, that are totally automated for you. You don't have to think. You don't have to understand the chemistry. You don't have to understand the physics. It's been done for you. Okay? Thank you.